The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with the glitter of diamonds and the flash of paparazzi cameras as New York's elite filed in for the annual Voices for Hope charity concert. Alex Thornton, 35-year-old Wall Street wunderkind and notorious bachelor, adjusted his bow tie as he strode confidently through the crowd. "Mr. Thornton, over here," called out Allison Reed, the event organizer. Her auburn hair was piled elegantly atop her head, and her emerald green gown hugged her curves in a way that made Alex's breath catch. "We're so glad you could make it. Your generous donation has made tonight possible." Alex flashed his $1 million smile, the one that had graced countless magazine covers. "Please call me Alex, and it's my pleasure. My mother always taught me the importance of giving back." As Allison led him to his front row seat, Alex pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Mom, it's me. I'm at the concert." Victoria Thornton's warm voice filled his ear. "Oh, darling, I wish I could be there. This flu has really knocked me for a loop." "I know, Mom. Don't worry, I'm recording everything for you to watch later. How are you feeling?" There was a pause, filled with a muffled cough. "Oh, you know me. I'll be right as rain in no time. Now, tell me about the children. Any standout performers?" Alex chuckled. His mother's passion for nurturing young talent was legendary in New York's philanthropic circles. "The show hasn't started yet, Mom, but I promise to keep an eye out for any future Broadway stars." As he hung up, Alex's mind drifted back to the day, 20 years ago, that had changed both their lives forever. 14-year-old Emily Thornton stormed out of the family's Upper East Side brownstone, her long blonde hair whipping behind her in the autumn wind. "I hate you!" she screamed over her shoulder. "I'm never coming back!" Victoria watched helplessly from the doorway, her heart breaking. "Emily, please! Let's talk about this!" But Emily was already gone, swallowed up by the bustling New York streets. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Victoria's desperate search consumed her life. She plastered the city with missing posters, hired private investigators, and appeared on every talk show that would have her. It was on one of these searches, a year after Emily's disappearance, that Victoria encountered a scruffy teenager huddled in an alley. His clothes were ragged, his face smudged with dirt. But his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, held a spark of intelligence and determination that Victoria recognized immediately. "Are you hungry?" she asked gently. The boy Alex nodded warily. That meal at a nearby diner turned into a conversation, which turned into a lifeline for both of them. Within months, Victoria had legally adopted Alex, pouring all the love she couldn't give her missing daughter into this boy who had nobody else in the world. Now, 20 years later, Alex sat in the opulent concert hall, a self-made millionaire with the world at his feet. But the hole left by Emily's disappearance still ached, a phantom limb that neither he nor Victoria could ever truly forget. The lights dimmed, pulling Alex back to the present. As the first young performer took the stage, he settled in, determined to find that special talent his mother so desperately wanted to nurture. The concert was in full swing, a parade of precocious children belting out Broadway standards and pop hits. Alex dutifully recorded each performance, but he couldn't deny a creeping sense of disappointment. None of these kids, talented as they were, had that spark his mother always talked about. Allison slipped into the seat next to him during a brief intermission. "So, what do you think?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "They're all very good," Alex replied diplomatically. "My mother will be thrilled to see the recordings." Allison leaned in conspiratorially, her perfume tickling Alex's senses. "Just wait. I've saved the best for last. There's a girl, Carly. She has the most extraordinary voice I've ever heard. But there's a catch." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "She has amnesia, was found wandering in Central Park 2 years ago. No ID, no memory of who she was or where she came from. The doctors say it was likely caused by severe trauma. But when she sings..." Allison shook her head in wonder. "It's like she becomes someone else entirely." Before Alex could respond, the lights dimmed again. A petite blonde girl, no more than 16, took center stage. Her simple white dress was a stark contrast to the glitzy costumes of the previous performers, and then she began to sing. From the first note, Alex was transfixed. Carly's voice soared through the concert hall, pure and haunting. It was as if every emotion he'd ever felt was being channeled through her song. Unbidden, tears sprang to his eyes. As the last note faded away, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. Alex fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking slightly as he sent the video to his mother. "You're right," he whispered to Allison. "She's incredible." But there was something else, something Alex couldn't quite put his finger on, a nagging sense of familiarity that tugged at the edges of his mind. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Bring her to me, now." Alex's Aston Martin tore through the late-night streets of Manhattan, his mind racing even faster than the car. What had his mother seen in that video that had her so agitated? As he pulled into the circular driveway of the Thornton mansion, he saw the lights blazing in every window. Clearly, Victoria hadn't waited up for him calmly. He burst through the front door to find Victoria pacing in the foyer, still in her silk robe despite the late hour. Her face was pale, her eyes wild with a mix of hope and fear. "Mom, what's going on? Are you okay?" Victoria grabbed his arms, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman in her 60s. "That girl, Alex, the one who was singing. I need to see her. Tonight." Alex gently guided his mother to the plush sofa in the living room. "Mom, it's nearly midnight. The orphanage is closed. We can go first thing in the morning, I promise. But right now, you need to rest. You're still recovering from the flu." Victoria shook her head vehemently. "You don't understand. I think she might be Emily's daughter." Alex felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "What? Mom, that's impossible. Emily was only 14 when she ran away. This girl is at least 16. "I know how it sounds," Victoria said, her voice trembling. "But look." She grabbed a remote, and suddenly the enormous flat-screen TV came to life. It was an old home video, the kind shot on camcorders in the late 90s. A young girl with long blonde hair and striking green eyes was singing into a hairbrush, her voice pure and sweet. "That's Emily," Alex whispered, transfixed by the image of the sister he'd never known. Victoria nodded. "Now watch this." She pulled up the video Alex had sent her from the concert. As Carly's face filled the screen, the resemblance was undeniable. The same delicate features, the same captivating green eyes. "Oh my God," Alex breathed. "But how?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know, but I have to find out. Please, Alex, bring her to me. I need to know if she's my granddaughter." As Alex looked at his mother's pleading face, he knew there would be no rest for either of them until they unraveled this mystery. "Okay," he said, already pulling out his phone. "I'll make some calls. We'll get to the bottom of this, Mom. I promise." The next morning found Alex and Victoria in the austere office of Dr. Eleanor Simmons, director of the Harmony House Orphanage. The good doctor peered at them over her wire-rimmed glasses, her expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, while I appreciate your interest in Carly, I must remind you that our children's privacy is of utmost importance to us." Alex leaned forward, his most charming smile in place. "We completely understand, Dr. Simmons, but we believe there might be a family connection here. Surely you can appreciate how important that could be for Carly?" Dr. Simmons sighed, relenting slightly. "Very well. What would you like to know?" Victoria spoke up, her voice quavering with emotion. "How did Carly come to be in your care?" The doctor's face softened. "It's quite a tragic story, I'm afraid. Carly was found wandering in Central Park 2 years ago. She was dehydrated, malnourished, and completely disoriented. When the police brought her in, she couldn't tell us her name or where she came from. The trauma of whatever she'd been through had caused severe amnesia." Alex felt his mother's hand tighten on his arm. "And her mother?" Victoria asked. "Was there any sign of her?" Dr. Simmons shook her head sadly. "We ran her DNA through every database we could. No matches. But given Carly's condition when she was found and some other evidence, we believe her mother likely died trying to protect her from some sort of danger." Victoria let out a small gasp. Alex wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steadying her. "What kind of danger?" he asked. The doctor hesitated. "I really shouldn't say more without concrete proof of your connection to Carly, but if you're truly her family..." Well, let's just say there are some very bad people out there who might still be looking for her. Alex's mind raced. Could Emily have gotten mixed up with criminals? Is that why she never came home? Dr. Simmons, he said, his voice low and urgent. We'd like to request a DNA test to confirm if Carly is indeed related to us. The doctor nodded slowly. I suppose that would be the most prudent course of action, but I must warn you, if the test comes back negative, this ends here. Carly has been through enough trauma without getting her hopes up needlessly. As they left the office, Alex could feel the weight of 2 decades of unanswered questions pressing down on them. Whatever the truth was, he knew their lives were about to change forever. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of anticipation and tentative bonding. While they waited for the DNA results, Victoria threw herself into getting to know Carly. The girl spent every afternoon at the Thornton mansion, her initial shyness gradually giving way to a quiet warmth. Alex watched in amazement as his mother came alive in a way he hadn't seen in years. The two would spend hours at the grand piano in the music room, Victoria patiently teaching Carly classical pieces while the girl's angelic voice filled the house with song. One evening, as Alex returned home from a long day at the office, he paused in the doorway of the music room. Victoria and Carly sat side by side at the piano, their blonde heads bent close together as they pored over a piece of sheet music. The scene was so domestic, so right, that Alex felt his throat tighten with emotion. Well, well, he said, announcing his presence. Looks like I'm interrupting a master class. Carly looked up, a shy smile lighting up her face. Hi, Alex. Victoria was just teaching me Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It's so beautiful. Indeed it is, Alex replied, his eyes meeting his mother's over Carly's head. The hope and love he saw there nearly took his breath away. Just then, Alex's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, his heart racing when he saw the caller ID. It's the lab, he said, his voice suddenly hoarse. The test results are in. Victoria stood, her hand reaching out to steady herself on the piano. Well? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What does it say? Alex scanned the email, his eyes widening. He looked up, a smile spreading across his face. It's a match. Carly is your granddaughter. The room erupted in a cacophony of sobs, laughter, and disbelieving exclamations. Victoria pulled Carly into a fierce hug, tears streaming down both their faces. Alex watched, his own eyes misting over, as years of pain and longing seemed to melt away in the warmth of their embrace. But amidst the joy, a small voice piped up. I remember, Carly said, her voice trembling. I remember my mom. She was trying to protect me. There were bad men chasing us. She told me to run, to hide, and then... Carly's voice broke as the floodgates of memory opened. Victoria held her close, murmuring soothing words as the girl sobbed out years of repressed trauma. As Alex watched his newfound niece cry in his mother's arms, he felt a fierce protectiveness wash over him. Whatever had happened to Emily, whatever danger still lurked in Carly's past, he vowed then and there to keep his family safe, no matter the cost. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotion and adjustment. Carly moved into the Thornton mansion, her few belongings from the orphanage looking woefully out of place in the opulent guest room that was now hers. With the return of her memories came nightmares and panic attacks. Victoria insisted on the best therapists money could buy, determined to help her granddaughter heal from the traumas of her past. Alex threw himself into investigating what had happened to Emily. He hired private detectives, called in favors from his contacts in law enforcement, and spent countless late nights poring over old police reports and newspaper articles. Slowly but surely, a picture began to emerge. Emily, young and naive, had fallen in with a dangerous crowd after running away. She'd gotten mixed up with a notorious crime family, becoming a reluctant accomplice in their schemes. But when she'd gotten pregnant with Carly, she'd tried to break free. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, but the full picture remained frustratingly out of reach. What had finally happened to Emily? And were the people who had been after her and Carly still out there? Despite the lingering questions and the challenges of recovery, life in the Thornton household settled into a new rhythm. Music became a healing balm for all of them. Victoria and Carly spent hours at the piano, their duets filling the house with a joy that had been absent for far too long. Even Alex, who had never shown much interest in music beyond appreciating it, found himself drawn to the melodies that seemed to weave their family closer together with each passing day. One sunny afternoon, as Alex sat in his home office reviewing some financial reports, a knock at the door drew his attention. Carly stood in the doorway, looking nervous but determined. "Hey, kiddo," Alex said, smiling warmly. "What's up?" Carly took a deep breath. I want to visit my mom's grave, if that's okay." Alex felt his heart clench. In all the excitement and worry of the past few weeks, they hadn't yet broached the subject of Emily's final resting place. A small plot in the family mausoleum had been reserved for her, though her body had never been found. "Of course it's okay," Alex said gently. "Would you like me and Victoria to come with you?" Carly nodded, relief evident on her face. "Yes, please. I think it's time to say goodbye properly." The Thornton family mausoleum stood silent and imposing in the dappled shade of ancient oak trees. Alex, Victoria, and Carly walked hand in hand up the stone path, each lost in their own thoughts. As they entered the cool marble interior, their footsteps echoed softly. They came to a stop before a simple plaque that read, "Emily Rose Thornton, beloved daughter and mother, though lost to sight, to memory dear." Carly reached out, her fingers tracing the engraved letters. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come see you. I forgot for a while. But I remember now. I remember how brave you were, how much you loved me." Victoria and Alex stood back, giving Carly space for this intimate moment. Tears streamed silently down Victoria's face as she listened to her granddaughter speak to the daughter she had lost. "I want you to know that I'm safe now," Carly continued, her voice growing stronger. "Grandma Victoria and Uncle Alex found me. They're taking care of me just like you wanted. And I'm going to be okay, Mom, I promise. I'm going to live the life you wanted for me." As Carly spoke, Alex felt a shift in the air, as if a weight that had been pressing down on all of them for years was finally lifting. He watched as Victoria stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Carly's shoulder. "Emily, my darling," Victoria said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry for all the years we lost. But I promise you, we'll take care of your little girl. She'll want for nothing, and she'll always know how much you loved her." Alex added his own silent promise, vowing to protect and guide his niece as if she were his own daughter. As the three of them stood there, united in grief and love, Alex felt a sense of peace settle over him. They were a family, bound not just by blood, but by the shared experience of loss and the joy of rediscovery. After a long moment, Carly turned to them, her eyes red, but her face serene. I think I'm ready to go home now." As they walked out of the mausoleum, the warm sunlight seemed to embrace them. Alex noticed that Carly walked with a new confidence, her shoulders straight and her head held high. It was as if, in saying goodbye to her mother, she had found the strength to fully embrace her new life. Victoria linked her arm through Carly's, smiling warmly. "What do you say we stop for ice cream on the way home? I seem to remember that was a Thornton family tradition after visiting the cemetery." Carly's face lit up. "Really? That sounds wonderful." As they climbed into Alex's car, the heaviness of the cemetery visit began to lift. By the time they pulled up to their favorite ice cream parlor, Carly was chatting animatedly about a new song she wanted to learn on the piano. Watching his mother and niece laugh together over enormous sundaes, Alex felt a warmth spread through his chest. This, he realized, was what family was all about. Not the perfectly polished image they had tried to maintain for so many years, but the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of people who loved each other through good times and bad. In the months that followed, life at the Thornton mansion took on a new rhythm. Carly threw herself into her studies, determined to make up for lost time. Victoria, energized by her granddaughter's presence, began to take a more active role in the family's philanthropic endeavors, focusing particularly on organizations that helped runaway and at-risk youth. Alex found himself re-evaluating his own life choices. The drive that had propelled him to the top of the financial world now seemed hollow compared to the joy he found in family dinners and weekend outings with Carly and Victoria. One evening, as Alex sat in his home office reviewing some investment proposals, a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. He looked up to see Allison Reed, the charity concert organizer, standing in the doorway. "Allison," he said, surprised but pleased. "What brings you here?" She smiled, a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "I hope I'm not interrupting. Your mother invited me over to discuss some ideas for next year's concert, but I was hoping I might catch you alone for a moment." Alex felt his heart rate pick up. He'd been meaning to ask Allison out for weeks, but had never found the right moment. "Not interrupting at all," he said, gesturing for her to come in. "What's on your mind?" Allison took a deep breath. "Well, I was wondering if you might like to grab dinner sometime, just the two of us." A slow smile spread across Alex's face. "I'd like that very much," he said softly. As they stood there, grinning at each other like teenagers, a burst of music floated up from the floor below. The sweet notes of Carly's voice, accompanied by Victoria on the piano, filled the air. "She really is remarkable," Allison said, her eyes shining. "You must be so proud." Alex nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I am, of both of them. They've taught me so much about what really matters in life." Allison reached out, squeezing his hand gently. "It shows. You've changed, Alex. In a good way." As they made plans for their date, Alex felt a sense of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just about a potential romantic connection. It was about opening himself up to new possibilities, to a life filled with more than just work and wealth. Later that night, as the household settled down for the evening, Alex found himself drawn to the music room. Carly sat at the piano, her fingers dancing over the keys as she worked out a new melody. "That's beautiful," Alex said, leaning against the doorframe. "Is it your own composition?" Carly looked up, a shy smile on her face. "I'm trying. Grandma Victoria says I have a gift for it." Alex crossed the room, settling onto the piano bench beside her. "She's right. You have an incredible talent, Carly. And not just for music. You're one of the strongest, bravest people I've ever met." Carly's eyes welled up with tears. "Thank you, Uncle Alex, for everything. I don't know where I'd be without you and Grandma." Alex wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "We're the lucky ones, kiddo. You've brought so much light back into our lives." As they sat there, the soft notes of Carly's unfinished song hanging in the air, Alex marveled at how much his life had changed in just a few short months. The empty mansion had become a home again, filled with music and laughter. The drive for success that had consumed him for so long had been replaced by a deeper sense of purpose. And as he looked at Carly, this remarkable young woman who had overcome so much, Alex knew that the best was yet to come. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. 1 year later. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was once again alive with the sounds of music and laughter, but this year's Voices for Hope charity concert felt different. There was a warmth, a sense of genuine connection that permeated the air. Alex stood at the back of the room, his arm wrapped around Allison's waist. Their relationship had blossomed over the past year, bringing a new dimension of joy to his life. As he watched Victoria work the crowd, charming donors and comforting nervous young performers with equal ease, he felt a surge of pride. And then Carly took the stage. The audience fell silent as the first notes of her original composition filled the air. It was a song of loss and redemption, of family found and hope restored. As Carly's voice soared, Alex saw tears in the eyes of hardened businessmen and jaded socialites alike. When the last note faded away, there was a moment of breathless silence before the room erupted in thunderous applause. Carly beamed, her eyes finding Alex and Victoria in the crowd. The love and pride shining on their faces was all the validation she needed. As the evening wound down, Alex found himself on the terrace, taking a moment of quiet reflection. So much had changed in the past year. The Thornton Family Foundation, under Victoria's guidance, had expanded its focus to include programs for runaway and at-risk youth. Alex had stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company, choosing instead to mentor young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. And Carly was flourishing. Her talent had caught the attention of several record labels, but she had chosen to focus on her education for now, determined to make the most of the opportunities her mother had fought so hard to give her. "Penny for your thoughts?" Allison's voice broke through his reverie. Alex turned, pulling her close. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, how we all are." Allison smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It's amazing how life can change when you open your heart to new possibilities." As they stood there, the New York City skyline glittering before them, Alex felt a sense of contentment he'd never known before. The road ahead might not always be smooth, but with his family by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. Inside, the sound of laughter drifted out onto the terrace. Alex recognized the voices of Victoria and Carly, no doubt regaling some guests with one of their now famous duets. "Shall we?" he asked Allison, offering his arm. She nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Let's go make some music of our own." As they rejoined the party, Alex knew that the true harmony in his life had nothing to do with the notes being played on stage. It was in the bonds of family, the warmth of love, and the joy of second chances. The lost melody had been found, and the Thornton family's song was more beautiful than ever before.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.